Hello guys, and welcome to this new video. So it's the semi-final of the Fide World Chess Cup Baku 2015, and today we have the second games. So we will watch the game between Svidler and Giri. In the other match between Elianov and Koryakin, the players agreed for a draw after 13 or 40 moves. So the game was really short. It's not interesting to watch that, of course. In this one between Svidler and Giri, it's more interesting as Svidler won the first game with the black pieces. So Giri find himself in a must-win situation with black. It's hard to win with black, well, we all know that, but I mean you got to try anyway, because if you draw anyway you're out of the tournament. So I mean either you draw, either you lose. It doesn't change much except 5 points in your FIDE rating, which is important at this level, but I mean, it's less important than going through to the final. So white goes e4, and here I would have waited from Giri to play c5 and to try something sharp, even if it's not in his repertoire, his main weapon. But I mean, you got to try something, and his choice of opening was rather strange to me. He plays the Caro-Kann, which is not known to be a very aggressive line. You must agree with that. So white goes d4, d5, knight to d2, pawn takes c4, knight takes c4, and bishop to f5. This is the big line, the main line of the Caro-Kann. Knight to g3, attacking the bishop. The bishop retreats to g6. And here, the move that was popular for a really long time was knight f3. But now there is a new move that is becoming a lot more popular. It's knight to h3. The idea is that you want to go on f4 with your knight in order to attack the bishop. So black goes knight to f6, and white goes knight to f4, threatening the bishop. So here black is going to play its pawn to e5. We will see that it leads to a lot of exchanges. In fact, it's hard to keep a lot of pieces on the board. Could have tried knight bd7, pawn to h4, pawn to e5, pawn to e5, and queen a5 check. But if white really wanted, he could anyway get a very equalish endgame in this line. But it's even easier after pawn to e5, pawn to e5, queen a5 check is the only way to recapture the pawn. Pawn c3, queen e5 check is forced, and now queen to e2, covering the check and pinning the queen. So now it's inevitable that we go into an endgame, which is slightly favorable for white. We will see why pretty soon. So knight bd7, protecting the queen. So now if queen takes, knight takes, activating the knight. Knight g6, pawn g6. And here Svidler is playing a very beautiful move to force the exchange, an elegant move. It's still theory. Bishop to f4. So the thing now is that the queen is attacked by the bishop, but the queen cannot retake the bishop because it's pinned. So it has to go on e2, trading the queen, bishop e2, and bishop c5. So this is still theory. The position is pretty balanced. The only difference is this pawn structure. I can't say that those double pawns are bad for black, because I mean it's pretty solid and we have this open file. So it's not really a problem to have this h-pawn doubled, but the big difference that white has the bishop pair and black doesn't have it. It means like white is slightly better. Most of the game end by a draw in the database, so it's a very drawish position after 13 moves, and Svidler must be just very happy about that. He goes bishop to f3, long castle, short castle, knight to d5, attacking the bishop. So it's hard for black to keep the bishop pair, so bishop takes, pawn takes, and rook ad1. So now black has an isolated pawn, which means the pawn structure is not ideal, but in an endgame with just a few pieces and an easy pass through for the king to c6, it's not such a big deal. I mean, just white will be able to apply some very microscopic pressure, but I mean it's no big deal for black. So knight to f8. Rook fe1, surrounding the rook, knight e6, bishop e3, attacking the bishop, b6. So now if bishop takes, pawn takes, so it's favorable for black it's improving the black pawn structure. Rook d3, planning to go to d1, king b7, rook e d1, king c6. So as I said, this is an isolated pawn, but I mean the knight protects the rook, so there are no pins on the pawn. It's well protected, and the pawn is protected by the king and by the rook, so it's really hard for white to apply any pressure on this pawn on d5. I mean, not any pressure, but to apply big pressure on the pawn. So white goes knight to e2, rook to h4, trying to activate the rooks through the fourth rank. Knight d4 check, bishop d4, and bishop d4. Here I think that Giri decided to take with the bishop, well, because I mean the knight can be a tricky piece. I mean the pressure is high on those games, and you can maybe somehow, somewhere blunder something, and the fork just come on the board from nowhere. So it's not a bad idea to keep the knight, though. I mean, it's very cheap. I mean, it's a really cheap way to try to win a game, just going into an endgame and trying to make fork with a knight. But well, that's what we have here. b5, g3, rook h5, bishop takes a7. So white is taking some pawns. Black recaptured the pawn on a2, so even less pawns on the board. And rook e d1. So here, I will just play a few moves through and explain at the same time. So Svidler, as you see, is not moving anything. f6, bishop d4. So if knight takes, rook takes, and then we take with the pawn. So rook h5, rook e3 attacking the knight, king d7, rook e d3. So white is not trying to win. King d6, bishop e3. You see, he's just put his setup, and he's just sitting here. He plays rook d1. After rook e2, rook a2 is going to play rook d2. So he's just sitting tight. I mean, white is slightly better. Black has absolutely no entry. If you go knight c5, I believe that this knight is going to be taken, and the rook goes to d4, and it's absolutely drawn. So if you exchange the knight against the bishop, you are even not a chance for those little pins. And white could have tried to play here a move like f3. Rook e5, bishop f2, trying to kick the rook away of the fifth rank to win the pawn. Maybe trade a pair of rooks sometime. Could have continued, maybe king f2 was a line I analyzed lately. g5, pawn g5, knight g5, bishop to d4, and rook e8. So this could have been like trying to get some activity with white. Well, this is equal, but it was like a semi-attempt to go to make some pressure with this little microscopic advantage. But Svidler doesn't want to do it. He just go rook d1, rook a2, rook d2, rook a8, rook d1. So he's not moving rook a2, rook d2, rook a2, king f1. So now the rook can't move, but I mean you can still move the king to f1. Nothing is happening. Rook a1 check, rook d1, rook e2, rook d2, sorry. So covering the pawn. Rook to e5, bishop d4 now, kicking the rook away. Rook h5, bishop e3 back. Rook to a8, rook d1. So you see white is just not moving, and black really can't have a plan to win this game. Rook a4, rook 3 d2 this time, rook a2, pawn b3, offering to trade the rooks. The rooks are traded. Pawn to b4, so black is trying a desperate pawn sacrifice. King b5, bishop to c5, keeping the pawn, forcing the knight to take the pawn. Pawn takes, king takes, rook e2, king e2, sorry, pawn g5. And here in this endgame with 4 pawns against 4 pawns, a total really dead drawn endgames. The players agreed to draw, and Peter Svidler really easily drawn the game with white. I'm just going to criticize the opening choice by Giri. I just believe he wants to keep his rating and didn't want to take any risk. But I think, we know he's a player that for which it's hard to really push himself to be aggressive. And today this was really highlighted by the fact that it was a knockout game and he was in a must-win position, repeating myself a bit, but just to make a point. And even in those situations, it's hard for him to play aggressively with the black pieces. So Svidler is in the final. He will face either Ilyanov or Karyakin. Stay tuned for the tournament. Have a nice day. Bye.